I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river in my soul. I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river in my soul.
Immortality, a far reach for the human mind, the promise of eternal memory, a ticket to the greatest show we think we know, the history of our town.
View it as you may, your life is but a small clip, a few snapshots in a slideshow that is greater than you can fathom. Each generation in this town by the river is an act. Its unique and layered lives, the characters. Its trends and fads, the costumes. Its music, a multi-genre soundtrack.
The tales change. The story's plot is complex. Solutions are hard to find, but the setting remains the same.
But then there's the stage. As with any stage, it itself is overlooked, scuffed by time, and marred by the short-sighted attempts at maintenance. Nevertheless, the town by the river is there, deep-rooted in bedrock, layered with sediment, and slow to change.
Our lives are reflected in the river's water. The current pulls in the current news, washing in waves of dreams and streaming out our hopes. This river, this stage, records our time. Some shallow memories, some stories blurred now, rippled over by the years. Some bone-chilling depths hold our bone-chilling tales.
Unchanging. Our lives rotate about the stage, our town with its cornerstone, this bend in the river. Tucked inside is a treasure, our history, 1,000 times overlooked in the bustle of our lives.
Here is our stage. The floodlights are gleaming river, and upstage is our hometown. This is the theater.
The theater.
The theater.
Of our lives.
I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river in my soul. I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river. I've got stories like a river in my soul.
Well, I'm glad you kids could be a part of the show today.
Miss Hurtful is making us do this.
Oh, but I'm excited.
Well, that's good. Well, maybe you'll learn something.
Yeah, right. Learn what?
Well, get ready for the first scene.
Great.
Come with me and you'll see places that are or that used to be.
Ask us and we'll tell you history of the town from dusk till dawn. Once you've learned the stories, we compel you to be the ones to pass the stories on.
Every time we launched a steamboat, everyone was excited. From all around, people came to the shipyards, some by foot and some by water.
The workmen brought their wives from the cottages nearby, and the proud new boat owners brought their guests.
Why do we have to come so early, Laura Jean? Well, Francis, just look at that crowd.
Hurry up, over here.
Joseph, come over here. You can bring the picnic basket.
Come on, neighbor, let's all find a good spot.
The floating palace sat poised on the waves, supported like a cradle. The waves held her ready to slide into the water.
The endless rows of waves were slicked down with layers of black grease that gleamed in the sun.
I can hear banging under the boat. Men are knocking out their supports.
People pushed for space on every deck of the boat. Highest of all and best dressed were the owner's people standing in the bow. They were all thrilled to be the ones to ride the slick down waves into the river.
A fine lady stood by with a bottle of champagne, ready to christen the boat the moment she started to move.
Suddenly, the banging stops. I'm gonna hold my breath.
Then the workmen started ducking out from under the boat and stood alongside, resting their heavy hammers on the ground.
Only the ropes were holding her now.
Is she ready?
What's the delay?
Has something gone wrong?
It's the most beautiful steamboat I've ever seen.
Slowly, slowly, it grew tense.
The lady was ready with the champagne.
Daddy is the only man under the boat now. Slash, he cuts the rope.
Then she began to move.
This was a crucial time.
Will she start?
Will she stink?
Will she be thrown off balance?
Will she break up on her way down?
Crash! There went the bottle.
Gathering speed now, she slid smoothly down the ways and hit the rudder with a mighty splash.
Plunging out into the river afloat. A floating palace at last.
Hooray!
Look at her!
There she goes. May luck travel with you.
Good luck, Steamer Indiana.
Ask us only, ask us and we'll tell you the history of the town from dusk till dawn. Once you've learned the stories, we compel you to be the ones who pass the stories on.
The launching of the steamboat took place in Port Fulton, east of Jeffersonville.
We lived in the mansion with our parents and our grandparents and our great Aunt Nanny who taught us our lessons. We were the first family to have a motor car.
This is the turn of the century, 1900, the sunset of the Victorian age.
Jeffersonville is now one of the best lighted cities in the country. We have 60 arc lamps on our streets. Soon we will celebrate our centennial, 100 years of Jeffersonville and Clark County.
The old mule car to Utica is about to be replaced by an electric car. That's progress.
3 trunk railroads enter our city. Soon the interurban will cross the Big Four.
The American Car and Foundry Building is building railroad cars. Business is booming.
We have a canning factory. George Fallon Sons is shipping animal oil products throughout the South and the Midwest.
Over at the Quartermaster Depot, they're making uniforms for our troops overseas.
I didn't know we had troops over there. I do know we have prisoners, 887 inmates at the Indiana Reformatory.
To our north, 100 people live in the town of Claysburg. The landlord rents to people of color.
1,000 people live in Port Fulton. The population includes a mixture of races and nationalities, including immigrant workers from Ireland and Germany.
Port Fulton has a lot of big fancy houses and some smaller shotgun ones as well. The shipyard workers and servants live in the smaller ones.
Off-season, men at the shipyards crafted our house and built furniture.
We employed 2 maids, a cook, a yard man, and a driver for our carriage.
According to Mr. Baird, our historian, Jeffersonville has 11,000 souls.
He also says at last count we have 43 saloons.
We also have a corner on the marriage market. Couples flock from out of states for our easy licenses. Runners from the marriage parlors meet the ferry with a fast pitch for a quick hitch.
We do have churches.
God knows we need them. The churches tore down the gambling houses on Spring. Palaces of sin, they called them.
They call our town the city of churches.
A comfort for those who fear. Prayer is a word the dumb can speak, a sound that the deaf can hear. Prayer gives itself to every creed, to none is its power denied. Prayer lends its strength to every need that pleads for God's reply.
we are just in time for the 2 o'clock ferry.
Here's the ferry coming now. It's the city of Jeffersonville.
Mr. Reynolds, drive our horse right up to the bow. I don't want our horse being disturbed by the other animals.
A hay wagon is behind us. That horse blew at me. Ugh, horse breath. Next is a herd of smelly sheep.
Oh, look, there's a motor car.
I wonder if women will ever drive those contraptions.
The ferry is off. We're going under the big four.
Look, girls, way up into the girders. There's the date. 1895.
Oh, the current is strong today. It's churning yellow with mud.
We're near the wharf now. Wait for the bump.
Every time we thump against the dock in Louisville, my heart stops. I'm reminded of my husband's father, James. It was his last ride. The horse took fright and backed the buggy into the river. It took them both.
Can we have a green sandwich at Benedict's? I'd rather go to Shims when I get back.
Where you're sitting now used to be a cemetery. Then it was the old wharf, the ferry landing. That's how people got across the river before there were bridges. Over there is the Big Four Bridge, completed in 1895. In 1892, it collapsed, sending dozens of men to their deaths in the water below. Up on Riverside Drive was the old ferry office, and where Jimmy's on the River is now was the Trolley Inn, a teen hangout in the 1950s, made out of an old trolley car. As we move north on Spring Street, we pass Shims Confectionary. It's the oldest run candy store in the United States. It's 116 years old. There's Jill and Warren Shemp in the window. Hi, guys. At Spring and Court, you'll see the Old Citizens Trust Bank, designed by a Jeff boy, Arthur Loomis. He was a famous architect who also designed the Masonic Temple and the Carnegie Library. Here's Warder Park, and the old library is being remodeled to house the Remnant Trust collection. In 1903, the cornerstone was laid for this library. Do you hear a band playing? I think we're hearing echoes of the Jeff military band that played for that occasion.
My fellow citizens, this is a great day for our town, and I am proud to be your mayor. 100 years ago, from a small river village, we incorporated into a town, and now we are a town to be reckoned with. We have a town center. We have a park. We have buildings with architectural style, grace, and permanence. And speaking of style, I would like to introduce to you the Reverend Enoch Powell of the Masonic Temple.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My fellow citizens, welcome to this auspicious event. Jeffersonville can be justly proud of the progress made here as we lay the cornerstone of the new Carnegie Library. Into this stone will be placed copies of the newspapers, military and Masonic rosters, lists of governmental officials, papers from the Protestant churches of Jeffersonville.
Well, what about the Catholic churches? Don't they have papers too?
Well, the Catholics and the Masons disagree. Don't know why, it doesn't make much sense to me.
Well, according to my brother, one won't work where there's another. Neither thinks the other has the right to be.
It is worthy of note that Jeffersonville has the telephone, electricity in its homes, and an interurban line to Louisville. Now we can boast a handsome new library. The building is the marvel of the architectural genius of our own Arthur Loomis. To flank our domed jewel in Warder Park, our own Masonic brethren, Mr. Loomis, is in the process of developing the new Masonic Temple at a right angle across Spring Street. He is also designing our Citizens Bank across the street on Court. Arthur Loomis, please say a few words.
Thank you, Reverend. I promise to keep my remarks brief. I was born in Boston, but I married a Jeffersonville girl, so now this is my hometown. I've designed homes here as well as St. Paul's Episcopal Church. The Carnegie Library will be united with the new buildings facing Water Park by the neoclassical style. This style symbolizes the rigor of our institutions and the standard we are setting for culture in our town. Reverend?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. Our new library will be staffed by Miss Bertha Poindexter, our current library. Please welcome Miss Poindexter.
There's Bertha. I'm so glad that she's going to have more space for books at our new library. We're so lucky to have her. She's a fine woman with a fine education. You know, she's already improved the number of books suitable for women and children.
And the new library will be such an improvement upon the room provided over at the bank. The men took it over for themselves. Oh, that wretched cigar smoke.
And those disgusting spittoons.
Well, dear, that will change when women get the vote.
Well, here we are at the newly remodeled Jeff Library. Inside the Indiana History Room are portraits of famous Jeffersonville people.
Ask us and we'll tell you the history of the town from dusk till dawn. Once you learn the stories, we compel you to be the ones to pass the stories on.
Come on, girls, and I'll read you the River City News from the Dispatch.
Can you read the history part of the evening news? I like the funnies from the Courier Journal.
Well, you've always liked the lines in the cartoons.
Yeah. Yes, Papa. When I grow up, I want to be an artist.
And you. We bring you books every Christmas. Your nose is always in a book. What will you be doing when you grow up?
I want to be a librarian. I love the new library in Jeffersonville. After Shims, it's my favorite.
Bird, stop doodling and pay attention. Bird?
Sniff, we'll show 'em. Someday you and I are going places.
And go places he did. Ernest Burt was born and educated in Jeffersonville. At age 18, the Doodler was hired as the editorial cartoonist for the Knoxville Journal, a position he held for 30 years. Burt and his mascot, Sniff the dog, were published in papers throughout the country. Through the power of his pen, Mr. Burt was responsible for establishing the Smoky Mountain National Park during the Depression. He returned to live the rest of his life in Jeffersonville, where he died.
The women of Jeffersonville don't get their names in the papers, but they work together to build a better life for this town.
True. Few people know it, but the Roman Catholic Sisters of Mercy constructed a sanitarium right here in Jeffersonville, next to the new hospital over on 12th Street. The sisters wanted to make a safe place to serve those people who have mental disorders.
And women laid the foundation for the old ladies' home on West Market. Spinsters and widows without means or children to provide for them need shelter.
Women understand the phrase, there before the grace of God go I.
And it was the women of Jeffersonville who spearheaded the creation of the new public library and helped raise the funds to match the Carnegie grant for the new building.
The women also helped to start the first library, and the one in the room that the bank gave us too. Bertha has always been our leader and our librarian.
Now, ladies, let's sing very properly.
Due to the ladies, men are cultured and classy. Sometimes we've kept them out of Hades. We must have been out of our minds. Schools, libraries, and churches, social graces wherever you turn. It's due to the ladies that mankind has not yet been burned. It's because
Mr. Kiss, I've come to show you my new invention.
Well, what's that you have there, Mr. Gunder? Looks like a candy machine. We have one of those.
Well, yes, sir, you do, but this is the first one that actually gives you change back.
Makes change. Well, that is swell, Mr. Gunder. Do you have a patent?
Well, yes, sir, I do, and I was hoping that you'd back me on it.
Well, we will, Mr. Gunder. We'll produce it right here at our factory on Wall and Market.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kiss. I promise you, you won't regret this.
We'll have a drink to our success.
All right.
By thunder, Mr. Gunder, you're a wonder. A machine that changes dollars into dimes. A coin goes in, the gum goes down and under. Old Jeff has entered into modern times. Kiss Me Gum will back you in your new location. All your new employees we will hire. Your contraption will make us so much money. We can buy whatever we desire. By thunder, Mr. Gunder, you're a wonder. It's up to us to market your design. We'll sign a contract. Now where's that pen and ink? We'll advertise it on a great big sign. We'll be partners. Now let's go have that drink.
All right.
Claude Gunder entered a sanitarium countless times trying to dry out from alcohol. His wife and children eventually left him, and Claude spent years writing letters of regret to his family. Eventually, he found God and started writing his memoirs, which were published under the title Saved by the Blood from a Drunkard's Hell.
My father died when I was just a pup. I was 5 years old when I had to grow up. Just mom and me and baby sister and brother, alone in the world, but we had each other. Mom worked in a factory miles away. I was alone with the kids all day. Mama called me her little man. I fed him and changed him and rode the frying pan. Can you guess who I am? Then Mama married a man so mean, he beat me and I left, I was only 14. I roamed around for many a year, chasing my dreams to become a millionaire. Working on the railroad or in the gas station, I had just about every occupation. Selling insurance or studying law, if you can name it, I've done it all. We lived in Jeff, right in the city. We liked the town, it was real pretty. The stores weren't doing so well at first, so we started the Chamber of Commerce. We built Jeff up, and then my foot got to itching. It was clearly time for me to be a switching. Knock me down, and one'll get you 10, then I'll just bounce right back again. Josie and the kids went south, and there I finally became a millionaire. I'm told I have a famous face. Can you put me in my place?
Robert Frank Taylor was the first black to earn valedictorian status in the Jeffersonville school system. A brilliant student, he was denied the honor because he was black. He was hired to teach at the black school where he taught every subject. Taylor High was later named in his honor. Taylor High is city school on Wall Street.
I have worked hard to do well in this school and to educate myself despite this society where Ku Klux Klan is still allowed to terrorize us. It has been such a long, hard burden, 50 years to be exact, since we won our freedom. Still, we are separated in our schools and in our housing. Our people over in Claysburg, named for our hero and abolitionist, Cassius Clay, still are not even part of our town. The condition of their school and ours is such a disgrace. I am at the top of the class for both schools, but I was only named valedictorian of the Negro school. Still, no one can make me feel less than any other. I am very, very proud to represent us. I am determined to beat this burden of discrimination. I will continue to educate myself and go on to educate the Negro children of Jeffersonville. No one, I mean no one, can ever take back what I've already learned. I will use the knowledge I have already acquired to better myself and the lives of Negro students like me. No one can take my spirit away from me, and that is true for you too. Qui leget reget is the motto of Jeffersonville High Schools. He who reads, rules. The key to success in this world is to learn all you can, contribute all you can, and do it with dignity. Hold your head high, and remember, qui leget reget.
And then came the war to end all wars, and Jeff geared up to meet the challenge. Our quartermaster depot had been involved in America's war since 1872, and now it went into high gear. It expanded to become the largest Army shirt manufacturer in the world. It employed many local women, and Army supply officers said the uniforms made at Jeffersonville were the best made in the whole country. Lonely soldiers from Jeff who were deployed far away saw JQMD stamped on their equipment and felt proud of their hometown. Ladies and gentlemen, now is the time for all of us to sing the most famous song of World War I. Feel free to sing along.
Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere, so prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware, we'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there.
The 20s was good to the women. Women couldn't do nothing until President Wilson came along. Before that, they just did the cooking, the diapering, the washing, taking care of babies all the time. They couldn't go to the saloon or nothing. They got the right to vote in 1920, and now the women running the world. We got 4 women preachers, smart women running the world.
In Jeffersonville, 1925. My mother lived in Louisville town. She worked at the tobacco shop when I come to Louisville, and she moved over here.
Mama and my stepfather moved to Claysburg, which was a separate town until the 40s. When I got here, it was snowing. They was just getting rid of prisoners over there at that place where Colgate is now, trying to turn it into a factory. My brother, he dealt up dead folks there in the yard. When everybody started getting sick, my brother quit. A whole bunch of folks did.
I came to Jeff in 1926. My father had the G.L. Corey Ford garage selling Model A's.
It was my job to go over to Louisville to pick up the cars at the factory for the new owners. Then I taught them how to drive, since having a new car was, new to people. My dad had a convertible, which I got to drive to school. One summer, my chums and I were at camp in Arctic Springs. We were trying out cigarettes. All of a sudden, there was a knock at the door, and we could see it was Mr. Scott, the father of one of my girlfriends. We looked at each other and then at the cigarettes. We opened a suitcase and threw it in. Didn't stop to snuff it out. We just closed the lid. Mr. Scott came in and we noticed the smoke puffing out the cracks in the suitcase.
I'd lived in Clark County most of my life. I was born near Memphis, Indiana, north of Sellersburg, and in Clark County. My family had a farm there.
Memphis was a little town on Old 31. During the 20s, the number of cars on the road mushroomed. It took all day to get to Indianapolis. Each little town like Memphis would put up a stoplight. Everybody in a car would then stop for a gas and a Coke.
I'm from one of those stops on Old 31 also. I was born in Sellersburg, which is named after my great-great-grandfather. He was the first postmaster there.
My father died when I was little. We came to Jeff with my stepdad. That was 1926 and I was 7. He worked at the Fine Shirt Factory. Owner's name was Fine. The factory's still there. You know, that haunted house on Spring Street during Halloween? We lived nearby. The house is an insurance company now. We had one big luxury, indoor plumbing. No more having to use the old Sears and Roebuck catalog out in the old outhouse. I went to Old Spring Hill School, which was across from the hospital. I used to point to a space and tell my kids my classroom was right there on the second floor of that parking lot. I went to Jeff High on Court. Some of that school is still there.
My grandmother on my father's side was a slave in Bama. My mother, she was a Blackfoot Indian. After we came to Claysburg, I got my baby brother into school. I never got to go to no school, except maybe that old school of life. I went to several of them schools. First, I went to haircut school. Picked up a pair of scissors. Folks say, look at those kids' hair. Got more jobs. Nickel a head. Still cutting hair. In my teens, I got my degree in hoboing. Hopping freight trains. You got to lay down in the weeds, time the vibrations of the track. You see a train put down a red flag, you got a chance. You gotta wait till the train comes to you. You grab a stirrup on a boxcar and put in your spike. Every hobo have to have a spike in his pocket. Can't own a boxcar from the inside. Gotta put your spike down so the door won't close. When I come to Jeff, I got my master's at Sewer Septic School. All the white folks' houses around Jeff, I put down their sewers. Got 25 cents a foot for digging and laying pipe for septic. It was $1 going down and $2 coming out. Over there, we call that Clucker Town, for the Ku Kluckers. Percy, me, and his daddy put down sewer over there, and they wouldn't so much as give us a drink of water. I said I wouldn't put down another foot. Somebody did. Don't know who, but it wasn't me. Fear God and mind your own business, my grandmother used to say. Lost my leg soon after I got to Jeff. Tractor dragged me and tore my leg right off. My doctor, he was a German. He wouldn't put me in the hospital in Jeff because they put colored men in the basement. Sent me to Albany. Cost $2 a week to stay with the nuns. Spent 3 months and 2 days there. They tried, but they couldn't save my leg.
I was a freshman at Jeff High in 1929. I began school just before the stock market crashed on October 29. 2 days later, the school let us off for half a day so we could go and watch the opening of the municipal bridge. I have stared at that picture of the crowd, the one with the kids standing under the Art Deco pillar. It says Indiana in raised letters. I'm one of those boys, but we all look alike wearing those beanies.
My mother was on that bridge too. She walked across with her uncle. When she walked across, she got a memorial coin to commemorate being there. And then when she died, she gave it to me, and I still have it.
Never was enough money around here. After the banks were closed, people walked the railroads, picking up coal to heat their homes. At night, they would go down the 9th of Spring to the switching yards. Somebody get up in the coal car, throw it off, be empty by morning. Big George watched out when the Pennsylvania came through, tried to catch people stealing coal. Sometimes they did. Folks would walk around carrying a long knife up their sleeve, reach to a hog car and cut off an ear tail. You boiled them in a pot, then you had a meal.
I built a tower to the sun, bricks and rivets and lime. Yes, I built a tower, now it's done. Buddy, can you spare a dime? In those khaki suits, gee, we look swell. Oh, that Yankee doodly-dum. $500,000 boots, slogging through hell. I was a kid on the drum. Say that you remember, they called me out. It was out all the time. Say that you remember, I'm your pal, buddy, can't you spare a dime?
Ella, dear, do you remember when we were little the games we used to play with the Port Fulton kids? Oh, we'd play Ring Around the Rosie and Mumbledy Pegs and Prisoner's Base. And oh, the skating parties we'd have when the river froze. And remember, we'd bundle up real tight and we'd go sleighing in the clean white snow.
I do for a fact, Sadie. Do you still have your first sampler?
I believe it's in the bottom of my hope chest with all the linens I sewed. You know, Mother insisted I be prepared for the day that I would marry. Oh, Ella, if only Bert hadn't died so young. I still think about the children we never had and how our lives might have been.
There. Now don't fret, Sadie. We have each other, and we have our garden. And look at the children playing over there. In a way, they are ours, too.
Oh, look, Ella. Isn't that Sally Clark's little girl? Oh, and she's crying again, I declare. Come here, Dolly. Let Miss Sadie see what's wrong.
Is that bully after you again?
They won't let me play because I'm too little.
Oh. You come inside with us, dear. Sadie, don't we have some cookies and tea for such a good girl?
Well, of course we do. Come along, Dolly. We'll look after you till your mama comes, because that's what neighbors do.
The Depression was probably hard on my dad's business selling cars, but he was still able to put me through college. I graduated with a degree in public school music. My first job after graduation was teaching elementary school music. One was the Taylor School. I was amazed at what rich voices the kids had there. They could sing full harmony. Taylor had an old busted piano. I could hardly play a note on it. So we decided to try to buy a new one. The Taylor kids sold candy to make payments on the piano.
I was teaching at Silver Creek and living with my parents in the country during the Depression. We were better off than our relatives in Louisville who had a wholesale candy business. It was on a Surrey wagon called Frank's Candy Company. They came to us for bushels of carrots and turnips. Living on a farm, about all you needed to buy from a country store was salt, pepper, sugar, coffee, a hoe, and a harness. Stuart, where are you, man? Come on out here. Tell him your story.
We couldn't afford the house with the indoor plumbing, so we moved to Meg's. I remember walking the tracks from the grocery carrying a sack of food and a 5-gallon jug of kerosene for the stove. My stepdad had terrible arthritis. His knees swelled up like basketballs. A doctor tried to straighten his legs, but he never walked again after that. We only paid $12 a month on Meg's, but that was more than we could afford. We got evicted. Nobody had health insurance or disability insurance back then, or much assurance at all you would make it through. For 2 years, I had a job during lunch while at Jeff High. My friend Fred and I delivered lunches to the Quartermaster Depot. We had to be fast. When the bell rang for lunch at school, we ran to Fred's house to pick up the lunches his mother had cooked. Then we ran up to the depot to deliver them. We ran back down to Fred's house to grab our own bite of lunch before we ran back up to the depot again to pick up the dishes and take orders for the next day. Then we ran back down to the house to deliver the dishes, then over to the school before the next bell. We made 25 cents a week, and all we could wolf down in 2 minutes. I was 6'2" and skinny as a rail.
Gordon, how are we going to operate this recreation program at just $100 a year?
Times are tough. With the depression and all, so many fathers are out of work. We just need to find cheap ways to keep the kids busy and out of trouble this summer.
I think our biggest outlay will be for sports equipment.
I agree. We need a program that runs on no money, and we probably can't even afford that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You know, we need something for parents and children to do together.
I don't know. I'm helping my son build a car that you can push.
Hey, it's a great idea. Something like a push car derby?
Something. We have extra wheels and some sheet tin in the garage. Perhaps the other kids can scavenge up some materials. Let's see. We got kids spending time with their parents, and they're making a car to run in a race. What's more fun than that?
You know, I'm on my way home now. I think I've got some junk in my garage. Let me give you a ride.
All right.
Ladies, gentlemen, and children, welcome to Jeffersonville Recreations Department's 6th annual pet show. It says good things about Jeffersonville that over 500 of you are here to see and support our children. Regardless of pedigree, shape, size, or class, each pet in the city had a chance to win a prize. Special prize goes to the most troublesome pet, most noisy pet, friendliest, oddest, and smartest. Gordon, how about the winners?
Thank you. This year's winners are largest dog, Froman Hosey. The ugliest dog, George Kincaid. The smartest pony, Robert Brendel. The quietest pet, Riley Northam. The first prize for the oddest pet goes to the amazing cat rabbit owned by Margaret Moore of Ohio Avenue. It's certainly most unusual. It has the head of a cat and the body of a rabbit. Yes, most unusual, folks. Congratulations, little lady. The second place goes to Fred Krupp, his horned toad. Congratulations, Fred. And third place goes to Mabel Elliott's tame crow. Congratulations, Mabel. And the noisiest pet prize goes to Louise Hunkler's duck. Back to you, Vo.
Folks, you can see our children are overwhelmed with joy right now. This year's summer recreation program will also contain a Fat Man contest, a pie eating contest, marble tournaments, a doll show, horse show, and bicycle races. There'll be model-up airplane clubs, horseshoes, baseball, tennis, and volleyball. We want to see all of you out this summer to support our program. And remember, we believe that a family that plays together,
vote stays together.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll tell you how I started making wine back in the Depression. Folks around here say the devil get you Mars, but the Bible says a little wine is good for your stomach. Jesus turned water into wine. Can't be all that bad. The way it happened was this. Won $5,000, $6,000 in a card game. Got a pound of moonshine, 4 or 5 years of corn off the vegetable wagon, 2 ducks, quarter apiece. We were eating outside, finished the corn, throw the cobs in the crock. Then it came a raining. Nearly 2 gallons of water filled up my crock, but I forgot about it. Then one day I started smelling something. Smelling funny. I looked in the crock, saw it was them cobs, smelling strong, so I put sugar in there and put on the top. I kept putting sugar in there and it kept foaming until finally it stopped. Then I strained it, put it up in the closet. Then one day we had a party. There was a girl singing, "Red sails in the sunset." She say, It sure would be nice, Morris, to have something to drink. I say, I got something to drink. She said, no, you don't. Well, we didn't have any money. Even if we did have money, we couldn't get nothing to drink because of prohibition. But I gets my crock down from the closet, had a whole gallon, turned yellow by the end. We had some drink, got to singing. She said, don't get no more down, Morris, because it can't stand back up.
Oh, Miss Clark. Why, they tell me your body was just ate up with cancer. I could even hear screaming all the way across the street.
Bad enough she suffered with old Mr. Clark and had to die that way. And him quitting the railroad and losing his pension like that.
Lord have mercy. Poor thing, she hitched her car to a poor horse. But she loved everybody, and he caused her to work herself to death, that poor thing. And Charlie was so mean to those children, too.
Wasn't her mother bedridden?
Yes. Sally took care of her every day. When old Miss Clay died, then she took in her bra.
You mean Frank, the retarded one?
Yes, yes.
Always doing for others. When I was sick, she came every day with food.
Yeah, and when Helen graduated, why, she gave her a dress that she made. Oh, look, there's Miss Clark's little granddaughter. Oh, honey, now don't you cry. If your grandmama ain't in heaven, I don't even want to go there.
When my grandma died, that December of 1936, heaven cried so much that a great flood nearly washed Jeffersonville away.
Okay, go ahead.
Water. In the morning, the river was up on Chestnut. We moved my mother's new dining room set upstairs. I moved my music upstairs, too.
I parked my brand new Ford on a pile of cinders next to the government depot. That car cost me $647, a whole year's pay back then. Somebody said my car would be safe because no flood had ever reached that height.
Look, the water's rising, Jack. There's a dog on the roof of that shed.
Gee, Dad, there goes a cow.
Jack, you get in this house right now. Honey, I don't want Jack standing out in this rain. He'll catch his death right now.
They say the water is spilling over the levee. You folks pack your suitcases and come over to my house to stay.
But,
I won't take no for an answer. That's what neighbors are for.
Mother, you go with Mrs. Wallace. Jack and I will go over to check on old Mrs. Keller on Chestnut Street.
The levee's been breached.
Dad!
Everybody to the boat!
I've lived in this house for 40 years, and I'll not leave it. You can't make me leave it.
Please, ladies, get into the boat, or I'll have to put you in myself.
Why don't people move sooner? Why do they stay in their houses until the last possible time, then be forced to leave by boat? With smugness born of inexperience, I have asked myself this question. I imagined that I would pack properly. But now I know why people stay with their homes. It can't happen here, we say. But this time was different. The water began to cover the second floor. As we left in the boat, all we could see of where we lived was a solitary chimney and a lake of swirling, muddy water. The Ohio River moved in as we moved out. Until 6 weeks ago, the term refugee meant some wretched foreigner clutching a bedraggled pillowcase stuffed with personal effects. Now I am a refugee.
We went to bed on the night of January 21st. The floodgates were closed and the pumps would relieve the sewers. That monotonous drone of the pumps lulled us to sleep.
Toward morning, something woke me. It was silence. The only sound I heard was the gurgle of water. The river was taking possession of our town.
Someone was screaming. A woman and two dogs were clinging to a rooftop a few houses down the street.
Overnight, the backwater surrounding our house had merged with the river itself.
The boat we climbed into was almost swamped. We sat rigid while the boatmen tried to keep control. The current was swift. I remember thinking, could we actually drown in the street in front of our own home?
We landed at the American Legion Hall. People were coming from everywhere.
A man carried in 3 chickens.
A woman ran up the steps with a bowl of goldfish.
We stopped to watch the water rushing down the main street. "My God," exclaimed a guardsman. "Who would live in such a town?"
My father's only thought was to reach this school where he had been superintendent for more than a quarter of a century. Only last night, it became a relief station.
The big white building on the hill was fast losing the appearance of a school. More than 800 homeless people were crammed inside. All our precious desks were heaped in the yard to make room for refugees.
The smells. I couldn't stand those smells. It was impossible to remain in such a place. Friends might take us in. I'm sure it would be no more than a day or two, of course. Why do these people in this refugee center why are they always muttering to themselves? Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I'm sure your husband and son will be here any minute. Let's get a mattress to set up for them next to us. They will be tired when they get here.
But Jack is so prone to colds.
We took the only exit from Jeffersonville, the Louisville Municipal Bridge.
We were lucky to secure housing in a hotel. We would have scorned the place in former days. Of course, we wouldn't be there long.
We spent our days glued to the radio.
Send boat 1128 south. Woman and baby on second floor. 25 people marooned in warehouse 22nd and Broadway. Have been there 2 days without food. Go at once.
Oh, we couldn't stand to listen, but we couldn't turn it off.
Man named Wallace of Jeffersonville looking for son. Answers to name of Jack. Last seen wearing a blue shirt and trousers. For more information, contact station WHAS.
We made coffee and boiled eggs as long as the supply lasted, and I hope I never see an egg again.
We stood in line for distilled water. How good it tasted.
I met a friend who lived near us in Jeffersonville, just wandering the streets. It was difficult to keep from running up to him and kissing and hugging him.
To keep warm, we walked up and down or went to bed, and it still rained as if all the sky had turned to water.
Without a word, a man opened the window and jumped from the second floor.
We went into a movie theater. Jimmy Cagney's picture still grinned from a poster. The building was packed with refugees, just sitting there in the dark and the cold.
When the water came creeping up into the Howard mansion, my mother and I moved everything upstairs and we lived up there. Each day I'd go out in my rowboat and delivered supplies to the people in the neighborhood and help with the rescue efforts. At night I would just float through our front door and tie up to the chandelier. After the water rose higher, I started docking the boat on the back porch roof and come in by the upstairs bathroom window. The Coast Guard would knock on that window when we had to go pluck another family off a roof.
I was a student at Jeff High in 1937. When the flood came, our family was living on Watt Street. We went to stay with a relative on 8th. We had to carry my stepdad, who was very crippled by then. The water kept coming on, so we carried him up to the quartermaster depot where shelters were set up. When the depot got flooded, we were loaded up in boxcars. They took us to Seymour, where we stayed in a church. I remember it was dark in that boxcar.
I was one of the last to leave Jeffersonville because the water wasn't supposed to get to Court Avenue. My new car was still there where I had so carefully parked it at the government depot on top of the pile of cinders, but it was swamped. The last of the boxcars were gone too, so I walked through the muddy water out to the tracks. I just waited north of town.
The water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. See that band all dressed in red,
God's gonna trouble the water. Looks like a band that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. I'm gonna wade in the water.
Going home, we had to obtain a pass to enter our own town. Our town was no longer called Jeffersonville, but the Jeffersonville area. The outskirts resembled an army camp. I couldn't believe it. We have no home.
Our town had housed 12,000 people. Now a few began to wander back home, drawn by that homing instinct. Faces were bewildered. Where do we begin?
We passed homes torn from their foundations, some resting in the middle of the street. One house sprawled on its back like a dead animal. White houses were now brown, coated with 6 inches of mud.
Coming home had always been a comfort to me, even if it was just at the end of the day.
We reached our home and looked at what remained. Surely this could not be our home. We had a lawn and garden. Here were 4 walls and a roof stuck in a sea of mud.
Our boots sank into the mud. The doors had swelled, so we battered them down. We forced our way in and around waterlogged furniture.
The house inside stank with mold. It was cold like a cellar. A foot of muddy water still stood in the house. I tried to find my sewing basket, but it was no longer recognizable.
The piano fell to pieces before our eyes. It looked like a giant had seized every piece of furniture and smashed it.
We came back in April. My brand new piano was ruined. The smell was awful. When school started, I stayed at Dr. Adair's in Clarksville.
We got permission from the state to certify that seniors had attended enough school to graduate.
Our family went to stay with my grandparents in Sellersburg. I stayed out there on weekends, but came back to Jeff during the week to bunk with a friend so I could finish school. That was the year I graduated, 1937.
Maurice? I was living on 14th Street when the flood came. It didn't come from the river. It come from Silver Creek. I never seen so many toilets sitting out. The flood moved the houses, but left the toilets. The flood picked up railroad tracks and just laid them down somewhere else. There's a pig, got on the porch and in the window, got on the table and had her babies. Saved everyone. God works in mysterious ways.
Hey, look, Jack, there's the dog. Remember the one we saw on the roof?
Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord, you're home, Jack.
Dad said he'd find me, and he did.
Let me tell you about gambling. There was always gambling around here. Used to be lottery houses. They play in the green house, the blue house, or the black house. You get $10 for a nickel in the morning if you win. I played a whole lot. I worked as a bartender at the Greyhound nightclub on Old 31E. The 3 Gavin boys run the place, gangsters from Chicago. I used to come in, used to remember all their names. Every once in a while, there was a shoot-up. They used to have nice steaks with big bones left over on the plates. I'd take those home, fed many a person with them soup bones. I used to walk out there to work, but sometimes there would be a limousine coming from Louisville, going to the Greyhound. They see me, pick me up.
Our story opens in the Clark County Jail, where Conrad W. Jimmy James, proprietor of the Municipal Club, and Edward Whitey the Goop Walker have been arrested and charged with the murder of Clarence Amster. Amster was listed as an innocent bystander in a gangland-style shooting that occurred on July 2nd, 1937. The Evening News labeled it the result of the Northside Gambling War. The shootout took place at a roadside inn called Walter's Place at the corner of Highway 31 and Applegate Lane. The inn was owned and operated by Walter Maddox, a well-known gambler with ties to the Chicago mob.
You know, Whitey, I believe the first joint to open in Clark County was the Log Cabin. You know, out there where Highway 31 bends. That was about 1927. That burnt, as gambling joints often do, about 1930. It was rebuilt, as gambling joints often are.
It didn't take long for him to figure out, did it, Jimmy? That there wasn't going to be nobody in Clark County that was going to close them down?
No, it sure didn't, Whitey. Next, it was the Lido Venice, run by that guy that used to run one of those lottery houses. I can't seem to remember his name.
Cisco, I think it was. None of them could measure up to them Gavin boys and the Greyhound, could they, Jimmy? No, sir, none of them.
No, they were hard to beat. And then there was that jerk, Maddox, and that clip joint he ran.
Yeah, and they called it the Silver Creek Country Club. Now, how the hell did he get that good-looking babe for a wife anyway? She was a movie star, for crying out loud.
The Evening News, July 10th, 1937. We want to commend the actions of the Reverend R.C. Dillman, who as general chairman of the group of local citizens formed to clean up Clark County, has been pushing matters. Reverend Dillman was appointed chairman of the group, called together Thursday night by President Charles D. Tumley of the Board of Trade to investigate the gambling and graft in this community. Approximately 50 to 60 people attended.
You know, Whitey, sometimes I wish I was still running that weekend crap game at McBride's Pool Hall, or running a stag out to Elks Club instead of opening up the municipal bar.
Yeah, Jimmy, those were some stags that you put on. And that idea that you had about having Tex cook the ribs right there at the picnic grounds? Everybody knows that Tex has the best barbecue in Jeff.
Yeah, and don't forget the potato salad that I had the Blue Boar make up special. You know, but the most important thing was that everybody had a good time and everybody made money. Well, you know, once we paid everybody and I deducted the cost of the food, I had over $1,000 left.
Yeah, and when the Elks Club got their cut of $250, they were real happy, weren't they, Jimmy?
Yeah. And Police Chief Hipstenberg was especially happy. He was on the Elks Club board.
He didn't know how profitable the gambling could be until you showed him, did he, Jimmy?
No, but he was a quick learner, wasn't he, Whitey?
But opening the municipal bar, now that was a no-brainer.
You're right, it was. And what more could I ask for? Big, vacant, two-story house right there on Court Avenue, owned by none other than Chief Hipstenberg's father-in-law. It was crying for a crap table. Louisville, just 5 minutes away. The bus line ran right in front of the joint. Every 15 minutes, a new sucker. I was in hog heaven.
Will the governor act now before another innocent bystander is killed? I can't say. But I do know what Clarence Amster, his widow, and his 2 surviving children would say. Now, who was Clarence Amster? Clarence Amster was a prominent New Albany businessman and the former president of the New Albany Optimist Club. He was a devoted husband and the father of 2. His life and future were suddenly ripped away from him in the establishment of one Walter Maddox, a well-known member of the Clark County gambling fraternity. Mr. Amster's only crime was to have chosen to have dinner with his wife and friends at Walter's place. Now, you might say that Clarence has succumbed to cancer. Not the medical type of cancer that strikes people dead from the inside. Oh, no. This was the cancer of the gambling type. This cancer can strike people dead without warning. This cancer can strangle our young people and blacken our community name. It is a cancer that has been growing in Jeffersonville since the first casino opened here early last century. A cancer fertilized by establishments like the Buzzard's Roost. And now, gambling dens like the Greyhound and the Municipal Bar have come into full bloom and can operate freely without fear of prosecution.
You know, it's hard to tell that we're in the middle of a doggone depression. Times are tough, but it always seemed that people around here are more than willing to spend what money they have on gambling.
Yeah, you went from being open just on weekends to every night. Open till the last person left. You and the Guthrie brothers sure were pulling in a nice chunk of change.
Hell, Whitey, on the weekends, we had to turn people away. Our pockets were full. Yours, too.
Yeah, that was the problem. You know how those two-bit thugs and grifters can smell money.
Yeah, just like us. But when the aroma of money started being smelled up in Chicago, that's what landed us in the calaboose. It's a good thing Sheriff Howell's a friend of mine, or we'd really have it tough.
Yeah, those 3 thugs from Chicago that Spike O'Donnell sent in really meant business.
Yeah, but they weren't no tougher than Joe Clark now, were they? He sure made short work of that one they called the Little Pope. You remember that night they came in the club? They thought they could scare us up? Heck, Joe let off with 1 punch and he ended up right under the crap table.
Yeah, Joe sure can put the fear of God in you.
A committee has called on several public officials demanding that gambling be stopped in Clark County. Of course, the municipal bar has been closed, but other places continue to operate. Is it going to be necessary for an innocent person to be killed before each of these various dives is closed? Another meeting is going to be held by this same group next week. We would suggest that this group demand that Governor Townsend take action with the state police if our community is to be free from gamblers and gangsters. The governor should be reminded that the dog track here will, in all likelihood, plan to operate this fall. Action should be taken to stop it, as well as the several gambling dens, including the Club Greyhound, operating right now in Clark County.
You know, I hoped it wouldn't come to this, but when those 3 thugs tried to kill me, it left me no choice.
Yeah, if those Chicago hoods hadn't tried to dynamite your car, would we have still gone after them?
Nah, it's hard to say, but I guess it was probably a matter of time. You know as well as me that Spike O'Donnell was behind it all. Maddox wasn't smart enough to orchestrate the whole thing by himself. O'Donnell wanted a cut of Clark County gambling, and he wasn't going to rest till he got it.
Ah, if you read the papers, everybody thinks that Maddox was the one he was after.
Yeah, nothing could be further from the truth. He was just a front man for Spike, just like he was for Lefty Clark out at the Silver Creek. We were after those Chicago hoods that O'Donnell sent in. Their orders, I'm sure, were to take over the municipal any way they could. If that meant they had to kill me, then so be it. The only thing I regret in this whole mess was that an innocent man had to die. Hell, Whitey, we're just gamblers trying to make a living. We're not murderers.
Now, gambling has been rampant in Clark County for years, as everyone knows. The public in general has been too apathetic in its attitude, but now the entire citizenry is aroused. Jeffersonville's reputation as a gambling center is proving to be a detriment to flood rehabilitation, to bringing in new businesses to our city. Conditions here are bad enough without the blight of gambling. Al Finney, who was unfairly ousted as State Public Safety Director after he engineered the state police raid on the Greyhound Club 2 years ago, he sent a telegram to our committee, and I'll read it. Congratulations to your campaign to rid your city of notorious gambling joints. It takes courage for decent citizens to fight an organized gang of crooked thugs backed by equally crooked politicians. But you can win, and I wish you the best of luck. Here's our committee of brave souls that met with Governor Townsend this week. Earl Ogden, Frank Clegg, Charles Hertz, Roy Good, Charles Fox, E. Prescott Long, B.A. Fees, and E.K. Linney. Ladies and gentlemen, you owe them a debt of gratitude. We urged our governor to send in the state police with full authority to close every gambling establishment in our city. He promised that he would give his decision to us by next Thursday.
I remember the night that you, me, Joe Clark, Ro Doherty, and your brother Buster planned the whole thing.
Yeah, and I will remember every detail of that night for the rest of my life. It was a long ride out 31 to Applegate Lane. Doherty was driving. You and Joe in the back seat. The plan was to overpower him, cuff him, and get him out of there. Doherty was going to wait outside with the car running. The rest of us would bust in fast. Joe with a machine gun, that would get their attention. Fast and loud and catch them off guard. Hurt them out of the building and into the car. That was the way it was supposed to go. I don't know what the hell happened.
Well, I guess it was mostly me and Joe Clark's fault. We saw that pistol through the crack in the door, got nervous, and started blasting away. How were we supposed to know that there was customers, eating of all things, behind a locked door?
I can't figure that one out either, Whitey. And after we blasted the lock off that door and I saw the mess we made, I knew there would be hell to pay. That guy Amster, he was laying there on the floor in a pool of blood. Maddox and his wife on the floor, him with a flesh wound in the arm and her with blood all over. Ah, no hoods in sight.
Didn't take long for us to figure out what happened, though. We ran out just in time to see the taillights moving north on Highway 31, headed right back to Chicago.
From the beginning of gambling on a large scale here, with the opening of the dog track in 1929, this newspaper has always vigorously opposed gambling and the graft connected with it. The opposition of this newspaper will continue so long as the gambling and graft continue. It was too bad that an innocent man with a wife and 2 minor children had to be killed before public indignation reached the point where the gamblers can be stopped. If they are not stopped now, they will become more bold in the future. However, gambling and graft can easily be stopped here and now by Governor Townsend. That is the only way it will be entirely eliminated. Therefore, Jeffersonville and Clark County citizens should continue their demands that the governor act immediately.
Now, we have met with Mayor Jacobs, and we have his absolute promise that the municipal bar will not be permitted to reopen while he is mayor of Jeffersonville. However, our conference with Sheriff Hughes was unsatisfactory to the committee members. The responses to our questions were considered to be evasive. However, I wish to go on record as saying that we will remain a permanent part of Clark County. Not for a few months like last time, but for as long as it takes for us to rid this community of this blight. And this time, we will win.
Hey, Hallie, how goes it? Well, I don't know how you all managed to pull this one off, but looks like you beat this rap, and with a restaurant full of eyewitnesses to boot.
Why, Sheriff, I surely don't know what you're referring to. We ain't been nowhere except in this here jail of yours for the last 105 straight days.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, I'm not even going to talk about the fact you got Senator Claude McBride in your back pocket, along with those 2 high-profile attorneys from over in Louisville. And, you know, we won't even talk about the fact that Maddox's porter and waitress, the only 2 other eyewitnesses to this whole shenanigan, happened to skip town. And by the time we got the waitress back all the way from San Francisco, seems as though her story's changed completely, too.
Well, Sheriff, you know, I've never been around guns much myself. But maybe they were just scared after all that nasty business over at Walter's place. And maybe they just decided to bolt. Yeah? Just like a racehorse when it gets scared. And then maybe after they calmed down enough, they remembered the way that it really was that night. So you see, they didn't really change their story. They just remembered it the way it really happened. Right, Jimmy?
That's the way I read it, Sheriff Hughes.
Okay. Well, I remember plain as day what Maddox told me the night of this whole incident. And I also remember what he said at the coroner's inquest with Tuck Coots. Completely different story. And then there's Joe Clark, and he's changing his story too. And somehow you all figured out how to get his wife to change her take on the whole thing.
Hallie, I don't know why you said me and Whitey was there. We were at the municipal club all night long. And I got at least 50 people that can vouch for me being there.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, the ironic thing about this whole situation is the only person that's doing any jail time is Maddox, and he's the one getting busted for perjury.
Well, Hallie, you know how things are in Jeffersonville. No matter how many do-gooders and preachers you got running around, things always turn out just like they're supposed to.
I started teaching at Jeff High in 1937. I helped start the Ohio Valley Choral Festival for high school students. 10 different schools came together to sing. One day, Elmer Hain came in. He had just started teaching at Jeff High the year before I did. He heard my music playing and came in. He asked me if I ever went to the symphony in Louisville. I said I did, and he asked if I'd like to go to the concert with him. You mean me? Was what I thought. But I said, yes, that would be very nice.
I was just coming in the door at Jeff High School, going up the staircase, and the music just flowed down toward me. I knew the Cincinnati Symphony was coming to Louisville, and I thought that I'd like to go. So when I heard the music, I walked into Francis's classroom and was inspired to ask the question.
Heidi and I have 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and a great-grandson. I have pictures, and you can see me later. When we all sit together at church, we take 2 pews. When it comes down to it, what more can you ask of life? A closeness to your family, your church, your friends, and just being part of your community.
Honor and respect will carry you further than any education. My grandmother used to say, now every place I go, people know me. They say, hey, Daddy Morris, and they open the door.
Each generation in this town by the river is an act. Its unique and layered lives, the characters.
Good luck, Steamer Indiana.
A floating palace at last.
Tucked inside our town is a treasure. Its history, 1,000 times overlooked in the bustle of our lives.
There went the bottle.
At last count, this town had 43 saloons.
Jesus turned water into wine. Can't be all that bad.
Could we actually drown in the street in front of our own home?
Come on, ladies, get in the boat.
And this time, we will win.
That's what neighbors are for.
Look, the water's rising.
Come on, ladies, sing properly.
Coming home has always been a comfort to me, even if it was just at the end of the day.
What more could you ask? Your friends, your community, and your family.
Honor and respect can take you further than any other education.
Sniff, we'll show 'em someday you and I are going places.
Don't get no more down, Morris, because it can't stand back up.
This town is the theater of our lives.
Our lives rotate on the stage.
No more Sears and Roebuck catalog.
We do have churches.
God knows we need them.
That will change when women get the vote.
The opposition of this newspaper will continue so long as the graft and gambling continue.
On the weekends, we had to turn people away. Our pockets were full.
This river, this stage, records our time.
Ask us only, ask us and we'll tell you the history of our town from dusk till dawn. Once you learn the stories, we compel you to be the ones to pass the stories on.